everybody. This is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for these devotionals. We're just reading through the Bible. Right now we're in Acts. We're in Acts 21, verses 31 and 32. Here's how the text reads. And as they were seeking to kill him, that's Paul, of course, word came to the tribune of the cohort that all Jerusalem was in confusion. He at once took soldiers and centurions and ran down to them. And when they saw the tribune and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. So a religious mob forms because they think Paul has done the unthinkable by bringing a Gentile into the temple. And this mob's pretty worked up about this. And it becomes a huge commotion, so much so that there's this mass hysteria and confusion in the already overcrowded city of Jerusalem during Pentecost. So the commander of the Roman Cohort, a man later identified as Claudius Lysias, storms down to the scene with several soldiers to where he finds Paul being beaten. Now, there's a couple of things about this moment that I find interesting. First, that the instigators of this mob, who go unnamed, by the way, are guilty of slander. And as we know, Paul has done nothing wrong. He never let a Gentile into the temple. So gossip becomes slander, which escalates into violence. And this leads to the second interesting item here. That's the slanderers are also guilty of instigating a riot. And this was a dangerous crime in the Roman Empire. And as you read ahead, you'll notice that Paul suffers even though he has instigated nothing. And the people who instigated this event suffer nothing at all. Does that sound familiar? Of course it does. This situation depicts the chaos and the suffering of sin. You see, sin results in suffering. All kinds of suffering, by the way. It results in suffering, sometimes for those who are guilty of instigating it. And unfortunately, sometimes it results in suffering for those who didn't instigate it. And this is what makes sin so heinous. In this situation, the mob who instigated gets off scot-free. On the other hand, Paul is beaten and chained and stands trial for instigating what? Nothing? Yes, nothing. And all over the world this last year, we have seen this truth play out, haven't we? But I have said this before, and I'll say it again. In God's word, there's only one who was an innocent sufferer. And that person was Jesus. He suffered at the hands of our sin. No other person suffers innocently. Not even Paul here. While innocent of this sin, he was not innocent to sin. Because we live in a world predisposed and subject to sin. And we are guilty of sin, by the way, that causes other people to suffer as well. So there's no doubt in my mind that Paul understood this as he experienced this moment. He didn't walk into this moment some innocent sufferer, right? In fact, in the same city, he instigated Christian suffering. I mean, in the same manner that he was suffering it right at this moment. And that ain't karma. That's biblical truth because sin is no respecter of persons. So today, be aware of your sin. Give attention to how it causes unfair suffering. And then turn your sin over to Jesus, the only one who can deal with the sins that you instigate, and the only one who can heal the suffering that it causes others. Thanks, fellas, for joining me today. If you enjoyed it, share it with someone you know, give it a like, subscribe below, and I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.